Hello, welcome to B2B Revenue Leaders. I'm your host, Dustin Tizik. On this episode, I'm joined by Ryan Doyle, who is the Chief Vibes Officer at Sales.co, and we're talking about the importance of not outsourcing sales too early. And it's kind of funny because Sales.co is an outsourced sales agency. So Ryan has a really interesting take here. We also talk about what has and hasn't changed when it comes to SDR effectiveness, and some tips and things that Ryan has learned from sending millions of emails on behalf of his clients. Hey Ryan, how's it going?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
Doing well. Looking forward to this one. It's not often I have people I've actually worked with and
Yeah.
had a work relationship with, so I think this will be fun. And for those who don't know, we're going to get into it, but as you said, you do cold email, and all of what that is people outsourcing it to you. And before this, you mentioned people outsource sales too early. So let's explain that and how that can be true.
Yeah, just to give an example of why I think you guys were right on time, running Testimonial Heroes emails for more than a year. When you came to us, you had a solid idea of who was responding to what. You had this message of, we will increase the speed of your deal cycle through customer testimonial videos. Therefore, people in the revenue department were good targets. We took that and we ran with that playbook, and then we could experiment with the winning playbook, going to things like customer service, marketing. People outsource it too early. And what I mean by that is they create a product and go, great, I'm just going to turn on a sales engine. And they do none of the work to figure out who wants it or why. And so they're outsourcing that learning, and they never end up figuring that out. Their marketing suffers, their product suffers. And then if they ever churn from that outsourcing, they've learned nothing essentially. And so I think that founder really needs to be involved in those early days.
Yeah, and it's like you mentioned, it's an evolving thing too, right? Like the message changed. For example, we're working on our narrative, figuring out, we acquired a couple of written companies. How are we going to factor that in? What do we talk about now? And we did a giant customer survey. So as soon as we got that back, I'm like, okay, how the hell do I actually fit this into my website and my outbound strategy and all of that? Yeah. So how do you think through that, just that evolution, and maybe how important the customer research or even direct feedback from the sales team, how important that is?
So congratulations on the acquisitions, by the way. But what you said there, you did that customer survey. You had customers to go survey. That's a very important thing. When you don't have customers, you shouldn't be outsourcing customer acquisition, because you need to get in and understand not only how somebody sees you, but what were the decisions and things going on in their life that led up to them using you, because that's a whole part of the story. If, for example, somebody wants to use Testimonial Hero because they just got a new funding round and that VC now said, you need to increase revenue by 100% this next year. They already feel that they're doing everything, but they have no marketing content out there. And they come to you and they say that, and 6 or 7 people say that to you. That's a little bit deeper than somebody just buying and now you have that from your outsourced sales agency. You can now take that and run a marketing campaigns of these VC funded companies. But you're only going to get that if you're able to do the detective work of actually talking to the end customer. So the customer research happens when you have customers and while you're acquiring the customers. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. And there's also this kind of research component from doing the cold email as well, because you start to see, there's a product marketing component, right? Where you start to see how people are responding, what language actually works. Who is actually responding to the cold emails? That's something when we work together as well, we tried out of, do we hit up the CRO and they can refer us because they're not the one who's going to write the check, but it's their problem. So I'm curious that as well. How do you package that stuff back and get it to your clients?
So when we do it for a client, what it typically looks like is we want to know, how has this been sold in the past? I think a lot of people will come in and will say, this is what we want to do. We want to test all these things. And we'll say, okay, that's great. And we will do that, but let us turn on something that lets us hand you customers in the meantime that's already working. Yeah. And what that lets us do is just say week over week in a report that we'll do in Slack, hey, here's how this stuff is performing. We're doing that always on campaign. We got you a couple meetings. And then in the experimental stuff, here's what we're doing. And we'll do a weekly or a biweekly or a monthly call. And it's usually about that more experimental stuff. I think the next level of that is we package up a few of the responses too. So just screenshots and all that. Who's this from? What's the title of that person? What did they say? And whether you're outsourcing this or you're doing it yourself, that's necessary to see that response, because if that CRO says, hey, thanks, but we already use this agency. Now they see that people are seeing you as competitive here and you might need to come up with messaging for that. If they say, no, thanks, we already have a marketing team. Now your messaging was probably way off because that's not what you're trying to do. So not only that numerical 5% yes, this many people took a meeting, but that actual qualitative, a COO viewed you in this way, and here's what he had to say. That stuff is super important. So you need to scroll through that email inbox or see those screenshots.
Yeah, and it's funny because that's one of the only ways you can actually get that feedback. Like feedback from customers is one thing. I can go ask them. If I want to go to our market who hasn't bought, it's either I do it through cold email like that, or maybe you could go to like Winter or something for message testing. But there's not that many ways to get that direct finger on the pulse out there.
Yeah. And that's why I really encourage people in the early days, especially, to be a part of it. But what I find is that people will try a little something. They'll say it's hard and they couldn't figure it out, and then they'll go to outsourcing. That's a little bit better than just doing it outright, but I still would push people to stick with it a little longer.
Yeah. I think looking at those different, maybe they're not booking as many meetings as they would like because they don't have the scale to do it like an agency could, but at least they're getting those qualitative feedback and learning a little bit.
Can I throw in, like, you're a VP of growth. What do you think about scaling before it's time to scale?
It's usually a recipe for disaster, and pissing off a whole bunch of people is the easiest way.
Yeah. And it happens in cold email too, right? They go, we want to scale. We want to send 1,000 messages a day, but they don't know what that message is.
Yeah, no, exactly. And on that point, like you mentioned before when we were talking off air about, and I agree with this, there's a lot of kind of cute tactics and hacks out there. Like I always draw the comparison between SDRs and like old school conversion rate optimization, like change the button, move this thing here. That shit doesn't really work or matter that much. So you mentioned it's mostly the offer that is what is going to determine success. So let's explain that a bit.
Yeah. So there are exceptions, right? But when I look across the 400 companies that we've worked with, when you have a offer that can either make somebody money or save somebody money, the closer that offer is to revenue, the more likely you are to get meetings. So let's take a couple examples. Something like cybersecurity, IT consulting. That might be very downstream from revenue. So to come in and say, we make you the safest in the world, you're going to be SOC 2 compliant, all that might not resonate with somebody as much as when a marketing type software comes in and says, listen, you drop one snippet on your site and we increase conversions 20%. It's very close to revenue creation, that CRO type of software. So that email is going to get answered more often, probably. And from the multiple millions of emails we sent last year, we saw that. So the closer your offer is to revenue, the more likely you are to get answers. In that 3 or 4 seconds that people are scrolling through their unknown emails and saying delete or reply to, that offer is going to stand out. And ultimately, that's the type of business that I want to start, that I want to work with. And if you are that other type of company that is downstream from revenue, you need to figure out how to tell a story that goes beyond just we make you safe, we make you SOC 2 compliant. What is that burning need that somebody has that's maybe not revenue dependent, but like they have to get it done? And can you find people and reach out to that? With that offer, it has to also be believable, incredible. So when you're like these brand new companies, in the end of 2023, we saw a huge influx of design agencies, unlimited design agencies. Maybe you've seen Brett from Design Joy. He released a course. Then he had a lot of people riding his coattails. They say, we'll deliver you unlimited designs within 24 hours. And it was the same offer as Brett, which he had succeeded with, but they lacked credibility because he has logos like Google and Microsoft. I don't know if that's true, but he has good logos on his website. So whatever that credibility is will strengthen an already good offer. But as the founder, you need to go test that offer yourself before you start outsourcing so you can gather those logos or that story that backs up your credibility. That's what I mean about offer. It ties in with that closeness to revenue and then how credible that story is.
Yeah, the story part's interesting too, because like you said, they have, when I go through my inbox, so I was out yesterday, Canada, long weekend. I came back through my inbox at each email. You're right. It got 3 seconds of my time before I decided to click delete or not. How do you think they're actually getting that story across when you know you have limited time? Is it just poking the bear and a bit of provocation, or?
We could do a whole podcast on this. Did you ever read Donald Miller's Building a Story Brand?
No, I haven't read that
classic marketing book where it like equates marketing to the hero's journey in movies. Yeah. And he has this chapter about caveman simplicity. So the more calories that somebody has to burn to understand your offer, the less likely they are to respond to you. And they should be able to say, like a caveman between grunts, what your offer is, customer testimonials, and just have it make sense like that. So if that is what we need to do in cold email, what I've used are things like Hemingway app to make that writing at or below a 5th grade level, which people seem to resonate with. And that flies in the face of what people think they should do. Because if somebody's out there selling jet fuel, they think that they should reach out to Elon at SpaceX about how it's got a flux capacitor in it. The octane is like nothing you've ever seen. It's got RGBD certification. And what they should really say is, our fuel's the same price as the other guys, and it gives you 20% more lift. And that's it. Save the complicated stuff for when you get on the call. Make that message simple. So I don't think it's like beating people over the head with it. It's just going out and testing very simple stories until you find one that resonates with people.
Yeah, the interesting thing there is it goes hand in hand with finding out what that story is and dumbing it down. Because I've been in companies where the CEO could tell a great story, but it would take 20 minutes. And if you sit down and listen to it, you're like, okay, that makes sense. Oh, I see how it's differentiated. But on the surface, there's a lot of products out there that look the exact same. I don't know how many times I shop for something and I cannot tell the difference whatsoever. And maybe there isn't a difference between them.
You can tell it's commoditized when they're reaching out to you saying, we're India's #1 IT firm. And nobody cares about that. They care about what they can do for you. And maybe you as a marketer get those messages that say, hey, can I book you 15 qualified meetings a week? You ever get those like in your DMs?
I get about 5 of those a day.
Same here. I own a company called sales.co and I still get those. But if somebody were to reach out to you with a slightly different but still simple story that said, hey, I can get you meetings with 15 people a week who need customer testimonials, like their lives depend on it, that might give you a second's pause. And this is part of the scaling too early. Those guys are out there automating like crazy. None of them really have any customers because you can't tell me 5 new lead gen agencies are popping up a day. Yeah. But if they just sent that one personalized message where they just changed that one sentence to what you, Dustin, needs, then they'd probably see a little bit of success, or they'd at least get a pity answer that helps them get to the right answer later.
Yeah, that's an interesting angle to take because obviously you do cold email to get customers, right? Which so proof is in the pudding thing. But at the same time, you're right. There's a lot of really bad cold emails and a lot of volume in your space, almost to the point where if I get an email from someone trying to pitch me outbound services, the trigger finger is a little quicker. I'm quick to delete it just because I've been programmed with so many bad ones. So how do you just focus on email for getting your own customers? Or
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so how do you stand out in that space?
So it's that story for one, right? If we have a campaign that's going to agencies like yourself, we're reaching out and we're saying, hey, listen, reaching out because we saw that you lead the marketing team at this agency. We've been running this for 200 plus agencies. And if you are in the cold email market, it's not going to be that exact line. I'm going to obfuscate it a little bit because I don't want you to take my secrets. Can I send you a video of how we do this for you? And that gets a 3 to 5% reply rate. And when we respond to that, I've shown this to people who want to start their own thing like this. And they go, that's great. Then I'm just going to automate that video too. And it's no, that's exactly the wrong thing. You got the interest. Now you come in, you create a loom with your face on that person's website. You send the thumbnail of that loom in the video that hyperlinks to it. In their email that hyperlinks to the video. So when they open the email, they see your face on their website or their LinkedIn. They go, I know this is personalized, and you tell them what they can do for you. And they either go, okay, thanks, but no. Or they go, this is great. Maybe we should talk a little further because I'm still not convinced. And this is the thing about once you've worked with a few customers and you have a process that works, then you can speak intelligently about, yes, we can do this for you. No, we can't do this for you. Because I know at least for us, we'll have some people slip into our campaigns who aren't good fits, and we'll just have to send them a reply like, hey, not going to pitch you. Sorry, you slipped in, this isn't a fit. Instead of just pitching everybody. You don't want to bring on bad customers either.
Yeah, no, it's a waste of time. They're just going to churn anyways. The automated video thing is interesting because I've fallen victim to that before. where more for, I don't know, SEO services or paid ads, or that's always been the play of let me send a personalized video. Lately, most of those videos aren't personalized. Like I can see the AI move their lips to say my name, but I'm like, hey, this isn't real, which just ruins the brand. Like I won't work with those companies just because I feel a little bit scammed.
I think that works. Before I did sales.co, my partner Jacob and I, we wanted to do that personalized video thing. And when I did it myself, I was getting like 45% reply rates at some companies. Doing it automated, nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
People can tell. They say like AI art is going to replace artists and all that, but people can tell, and people still like the human.
Yeah. It goes back to like old school marketing too. There's a bit of like reciprocity there of, oh, this person actually took 15 minutes out of the day to do something. I'm actually going to reply. So even I am guilty of, I don't reply to every cold email because there's just too damn many of them. But if someone takes the time to do something personal, at the very least, I will reply and say no. And as a salesperson, a no is not even that bad. Like it's something.
Know. It's directional, and at least points you in the right direction. But I will also say, I prospected into Cadillac once upon a time in one of my big sales jobs, and I would do stuff personalized, and I own a 1973 Cadillac Eldorado. And so I took a picture with it and I sent it in this email to the president of Cadillac, president of one of the divisions. And I'm like, look, I read your article in this magazine. We're lifelong fans. I bought this from my grandfather, and he sent back, unsubscribe.
Oh, I thought that was going to be a happy story, but
I have plenty of happy stories, but that was like my big layup to being blocked.
Yeah, no, totally. So on that note, you've been in the sales game for a long time, right? Back in the day, I think you started out essentially doing SDR work. Is that right?
Yes, like boiler room type stuff.
Yeah, like the old school SDR work. So curious, maybe what are we missing from back then? What are some parts that worked back then that you feel like people are maybe neglecting, given how things are now with AI and automation and everything?
Yeah, first thing that comes to mind is slightly what we touched on, where it's the story, but it's more than just the story overall. It's the story for the company. And an SDR is assigned, let's say 50 companies, and they are doing work to figure out what is the story for each company. What is the use case for them? And so like I said to you a minute ago, hey, if somebody reached out and said these people need customer testimonials like they got a gun to their head, that's a story that matters for Testimonial Hero. So instead of just blasting that story of, here's our value prop, what's the value prop for you? And it requires a little creativity. Like you might have to get a set of leads that's got some context to them that allows you to tell the same story to them, but making it at least company specific and not just saying every VP of marketing is going to receive this message. But how about people on the marketing team at Testimonial Hero are going to receive this message? People will pass stuff around internally, I've found. And if you have it toward that company and they can go, oh, wow, how did this guy guess our problem? You can get good at that over time. And then eventually somebody from that company will respond to you. People look at it as like all VPs of marketing. I'm saying, look at it like teams at a company and make a story for them. You're going to go slower, but you're going to get better results, and people will view you in a better light. That's part one. And then part two is it's still manual. People are automating a lot of the multi-channel stuff. I say manually do some of the multi-channel stuff. A strategy that I used to use that really succeeded, that an old hat taught me, was leave somebody a voicemail, send them an email and say, I just left you a voicemail. Send them a LinkedIn request that says, I just sent you a voicemail and an email. And you'll really only have to message them that day because they're going to see you in 3 channels. They'll see your picture. They'll remember your name probably. And if you're going to get a response, it's going to be from doing that. Again, you're slowing down, but it's the old axiom of flow is smooth as fast. You're doing all this fast shit, not working. I encourage you to slow down, take a step back, act like a human, and then actually get a response. Because that's all you really want is a response that helps you get a little bit better, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's this push-pull, like it keeps coming up in this conversation, right? Between automating, I guess, what you can, like some of the menial work, but still, like you said, be an actual human. So I guess one last question here, because there's also a lot of, I don't know, talk in the sales world about the old days of like an SDR army are maybe gone because of AI, right? I don't think that's the case.
Me neither.
I also don't think you can ever go fully AI. Like I do think SDR teams are going to get smaller, but I'm curious your take there. Say you had a company, they're like, hey, build out a sales motion, build out our BDR team, SDR team. How would you think through that at this time?
Well, so this is something that I'm starting to do. So when we did sales.co, we are pure cold email. We build tech for it, and it's about sending emails and getting responses. And we didn't want to stray too far outside of that. And then now that we've been doing that, and Jacob's running it as CEO, my idea has been, I would love to go into an early stage company and help them figure it out from the inside. Because if you are this early stage company and you come to us and say, we want to scale this, but you don't have anything, I'm going to encourage you to do it on your own. But I might, in this type of paradigm, be able to spend a few hours with you a week and talk to multiple people at your company, join some sales calls with you, and help you build it from the inside. So with the 2 companies I'm doing that with right now, it's a bit more than just send an email, get a response, hop on a meeting. I have found that people don't think about the process of like the numbers behind what they're doing and the step-by-step that they're trying to put people through. So what that means is the numbers. These businesses say something like, we need to double our MRR by the end of the year to raise this funding round. We want to go from 1 mil to 2 mil, but they aren't able to walk that back into, okay, average deal size 50K. A deal comes from 3 opportunities. 3 opportunities comes from 9 meetings. There's a 1 to 3 there as well. A meeting comes from 100 emails. Therefore, we need to send this many emails at that pace to get to the end of that. Then the qualitative side of it, when they're getting in these calls, they're doing all right, I had this call, this is great, and let me know if you want to buy this. But they're not actually taking that time to ask in that call, what use case should we most solve for you? And then scheduling a follow-up call from that call. I think there's an acronym for that. Book a call from the call. Have you heard of this? Book a call from the call.
I don't know the acronym,
facts, something like that.
Yeah.
When you do that, and then you can prep for that next call based on a specific use case, and you can say, hey, do you want to buy this? Yes or no? What you have is like a decision tree of people can say no at any point, but you've asked them that real question that gets them to the next step. It's not a soft ask. And so when they say no, they fall out of the process. And now you can really clearly look at what are the conversations we as a business have, because people are talking to companies and then they just exist in this ether between heaven and hell, where they're not going to become a customer, but they haven't said no. You want to force people to say no so you can figure out who you focus on. So that's what I've been figuring out. That's what I encourage people to do, is walk back the numbers and then figure out beyond that first meeting, what are the questions you need to answer to get somebody interested? And what are the questions you need to ask them to determine if they're going to buy from you or not? And make sure you're booking calls from calls. A little convoluted, but still working on it.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. I've also been at companies where maybe they didn't have an outbound motion. They're purely inbound, and inbound sales is like a disco call for an inbound is so much easier and so much different.
It's order
than an outbound call. Yeah, so you see companies that slap that process onto outbound disco calls, and they're like, why is nothing closing? This agency sucks. They're bringing me bad leads. But it's actually, there's a different process.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced that. And that's why, like, also I, as an agency, want you to have some customers before I start working for you, because I know you can close them. If you've never closed outbound deals before and I start passing you leads and they don't have their credit card in their hand, you're going to be ticked off.
Yeah, exactly. If only we were always that easy, they are credit card ready. But Ryan, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. If people want to learn more, connect with you, learn about sales.co, where should they go for that?
Yeah, so sales.co is our website. There's not a .com. Oracle owns that. I can't afford that. And then my partner and I have our websites, jacobgreenfeld.com and rpdoyle.com.
Awesome. So I'll include those links for our listeners. Ryan, thanks again. And yeah, we'll talk soon.
My pleasure. Bye, Dustin.
Thanks for listening to this episode. My key takeaway is about the value of keeping outbound in-house and really using it as an immediate feedback loop on messaging and your offer. You really need to nail that down before you jump in with an agency that can help you scale, because, I mean, what's the point of scaling something that doesn't work? If you enjoyed this episode, head on over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave us a review. I always really appreciate it. And as always, I'll be back next Tuesday with a new episode.